Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next Wasteless World Talks. And today's topic, the term again, very simple, Rex. And because we have Noah here and he knows how it goes, so I will start with you, Noah, today. So please, if you close your eyes and you see the term Rex, what came first to your mind?
A path, something to follow.
Okay. So we will, Kevin, you will be the next. The same procedure.
When I think of tracks, I think of with fresh snow. You go out as a kid and there's just fresh snow. And that desire to be the first to make tracks in the snow is irresistible.
And Bill, what about you if you close your eyes?
When you first said it, I was waiting for you to spell it because the kids play with cartoons and with toys that have funny names, and I thought you were saying Trex, Trex, some being or robot from another universe, Trex. And I'm trying to think, how do I talk about that? Um, So the second thought that I had was, I'm an old Boy Scout, so we followed animal tracks. We we going through the woods would look for a broken leaf or a leaf on the ground turned over that said that something had been here before us. Following it, yes, like Kevin.
Uh, it is interesting that generally you did not mention railway tracks,
Or I was also thinking of record tracks, music tracks.
which is music tracks are very, quite interesting, especially the vinyl tracks, because the young generation don't know them. They don't know that there exists really tracks which you have the needle and you have to put it there in the right place. They don't know. But I have heard that the tapes are coming back. In the
Really?
tapes,
I
yes.
Albums actually are starting to come back, so maybe we'll see vinyl again. Music artists are releasing, rather than just releasing singles, they're releasing full albums, which I think is great. Kevin, I want to note, I'm glad you said snow. I'm a skier, and there is no better feeling in the world than making fresh tracks in the snow coming down a slope. When you get
I agree
that,
with that.
people fight for first chair so they can make the initial tracks in the snow after a snowfall.
It's great because in a way it's how it's a one way of making footprints in the sands of time, even if that time only lasts a few days.
Uh, if you hear the term tracks, do you see more what is in front of you or what you left behind?
Interesting. I see what's in front of me. But as a futurist, what would you expect, huh?
Of course, of course. What about you now?
My
Sorry, Bill,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's definitely a look ahead term for me. Um, even to that point about making new tracks, you're looking ahead into the future, the next step, or as I mentioned earlier, following something and looking ahead. Yeah, it's forward facing for me for sure.
And you, Kevin?
Actually, I was thinking from what the guys have just said that the fact that when we are kids, this urge to make tracks into the snow, to make your own tracks, how many of us lose that urge by the time we're adults and will happily follow in the
right.
footstep of others rather than making our own?
Uh, but I remember as a child in the backyard playing uh, the fox and the hen, where you made a big circle in the ground, like a wheel with several spokes, and it was like playing tag, but you had to stay within the tracks. And the fox would try to chase everybody else, and if they caught him, then it was so you had to stay in the tracks with everyone else, and that helps to teach the kids not to step out of the tracks.
No, to be honest, I like to look back at my own tracks. I like the white paper, which is like the snow, but I like to look back and looking back, not shame for a single step which is creating the tracks behind, because this is what we leave behind. And it's quite interesting because I work quite a lot with social media, and generally what I have found that the longest analytics is 2 years. They delete it. You cannot see longer or for a longer period of time than 2 years usually. Facebook time to time deliver a little longer, but LinkedIn 2 years.
It's interesting. I'm going to go back to skiing again. So you're making tracks as I go down the slope is looking ahead. But to your point about, I guess, Michael, you're talking about measuring performance, right, in your tracks. When I'm on the ski lift going back up, I try to identify which are my tracks in the snow and, the types of turns that I was making as I'm coming down to see to measure my performance, to see how I'm doing, to see if there are things I can improve based upon the tracks I leave in the snow.
In fact, it's interesting. We're talking about tracks, digital tracks, because we just don't have a clue how permanent they are. I think if you carve in a cathedral in the 14th, 15th century, you're leaving something which will go hundreds of years ahead of you into the future. Whereas with digital, it is always looking back. There's nothing forward-looking about digital tracks.
That's interesting.
That makes me think about my existence here. All of a sudden, we've gotten existential. Because I know that I'm here. When I'm gone, my children will remember me for some time. By the third or fourth generation, they will remember my name, and there may be something here that they will say, oh, this was the coffee cup that Granddaddy used. But in 100 years or 150 years, I will leave no track. My tracks will be gone. So why am I here?
That's interesting, Bill. Like it's an interesting tie. Language is so fascinating. It's an interesting tie between tracks and legacy, right? So tracks are maybe a short-term legacy, and to Kevin's earlier point, they eventually fade. Could be in days, could be in hours, but legacy really is tracks, an imprint that lasts generations.
I like what Kevin says about the builders of the cathedrals. And today, really, very few people, because we know that if we put something on LinkedIn, in 2 minutes, it will be already almost gone because there is so many in 1 minute time, so many are posting. So we are not thinking ahead. On the other hand, I write to the future, so I travel the future every day generally, which is quite interesting because creating the future is better than waiting what the future will bring. But it is quite interesting what you said, Kevin, because this is why so many are probably do not take care about their tracks at all. And I tried once, there should exist tools, even the free tools, which will track your activity online. So what you did and so on. I think even Google has something like that. I would like to see, but I haven't found the tool. And I will be interested because you know I am very active. It will be a long, long list, but it will be quite interesting to see that.
I think one of the great shames is the loss of local newspapers. And definitely in the US, same in the UK, they have just vanished. But it used to be that every local newspaper had births, christenings, weddings, and death notices. And that was, in a way, that was your footprint. That was there. So it felt so permanent. But again, everything digital doesn't project forward, it just projects backwards.
Shifting maybe just for a moment from digital to physical in the context of a wasteless world, the stats show that at least in the US, the average human generates somewhere between 4.5 to 5 pounds of waste a day. And these are tracks that are commemorate our consumption, that then get aggregated and either recycled or burned or landfilled, and we lose the individuality of our tracks, our consumption tracks. It's making me think that it'd be a very interesting exercise to keep my waste for a longer period of time as a trail of consumption. For Michael, to your point, right, better analysis of behavior and what I do, and Kevin, to your earlier point about how transitional we are right now in this society, where things don't last. We're not built to last, but it doesn't mean these things go away. There is no way. They're just moved to a different place and aggregated, and we lose individual accountability for our contributions, both good and bad, right? So we make good digital contributions that get buried, to Michael's point, and we make waste contributions that get processed in mass, that become less significant to the individual and more significant in mass. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but it's very interesting in the context of waste and tracks as well.
You know, there was a recent study, 3-year study. They analyzed waste, the municipal waste generally. And the result of the study was, it was in Czech Republic, just published last week. The result of the study was that the end users generate most waste and wasting more and more. That was the general output. But you know, it's nonsense. But at the same time, they are right. You know why? Because they analyze only household waste. They did not analyze the biggest volumes of waste which are generated by industries. And this is why they came to the conclusion humans or the end users are the ones who are generated most of the waste. And I don't know, Noah, a few years ago, 5 or maybe 10 years ago, there was a guy in the US who has like a uniform made out of transparent plastic. And for 1 week, every piece of waste he put inside. I think you can find it on YouTube as well. So at the end, he was huge, of course, but to show the footprint. The issue is that it was in media, but the industries has been fine, you know. For them, it is great to shift the responsibility to the end user, but in fact, they are responsible. And coming back to the tracks, there was another study here which just was released, and this was the scientists or researchers put RFID tags in empty plastic bottles to check what will happen. The result was that only 12 has been really recycled. All the rest was somewhere, landfill, burned, whatever. So the other issue is with the tracks and with the with the topic of waste that many governments and people consider that sorting the waste is recycling the waste. It's not. And this is one of the issues. This is one of the issues because even the government says we are recycling, but they are speaking about sorting. We are great in sorting. We can do sort. We can sort very well. But the waste industry is not interested in recycling because they are interested in waste management, not no waste. Or that's the issue.
You know, Michael,
yeah, it's actually, sorry, Kevin,
no,
it's a little
go
more
ahead.
complicated than that. The way that I've spent a lot of time working on this and studying this, the way that we measure recycling is actually out the back of the MRF, the Material Reclamation Facility. So it needs to have a market. So all of that waste that gets sorted needs to be resold, and it's considered recycled when it's resold, not when it comes in the front of the MRF. Anyway, sorry, Kevin.
No, you are right. Kevin.
I was going to say, looking at tracks, wouldn't it be interesting if every product had its track from how it was sourced to how it got to our shopping trolley? You know, anything from an avocado to fish. I remember once I bought some fish in one of the discount supermarkets in Copenhagen, and it had a map on the back saying that this fish is a managed resource fish. It was caught in the Bering Sea. It was free. It was wild. And we're not harming fish stocks. But I would love to see one of an avocado. You know, this avocado came from God knows where, was transported all the way around the world on a ship, which used this much, this much, this much. Real tracks to see how much waste and how much cost and energy was used to produce something. Another thing is that we're called the end user, but we're just being framed because we're not the end user. It is passed on, our waste. We don't end use, somebody else does.
It's a very great point. And generally with the introduction of not the Bitcoin, but the technology, blockchain, exactly. With the introduction of blockchain about 10 years ago, they said they will be able to track this. I saw several applications. None of them works at the end, or none of them was able to deliver. And as you said, Kevin, I don't know whether I mentioned it last time, but I bought a chicken breast to make some food out of it in Tesco. And in Europe, you know it, we have to have the land of production on the packaging, or even the producer. The producer was Tesco. So I was thinking, great, finally they opened part of the supermarket and have the chickens there. But I never heard them. And so maybe some hidden development, not sure, to reduce the carbon footprint, but really the producer was Tesco. So they go around again, and tracking means even less visibility than it was before.
Michael, you say Tesco, that the producer was Tesco. Would you spell that?
Tesco. This is a supermarket chain from Britain.
Okay. Okay.
Bill, I think the U.S. equivalent would be Kirkland Products at Costco. You know, it's the same. It's the same organization.
Okay. I'm reminded of a story that I read probably 5 or 10 years ago. And there was a woman, European, American, I don't remember, and she did an experiment for 1 year to see how little waste she could produce. So she had composting, she had reusing. So she never bought anything that came in any packaging, and she held up a bag like this at the end of the year, and that was the total waste that she had produced for 1 year. And I thought, how the heck do you do that? You know, I go out to the dumpster 2 or 3 times a week for crying out loud, with great big bags for two people. It's, how do you do that? And the other thought I had when we're talking about tracks is our 2.5-year-old granddaughter spent the weekend with us, and we went outside and it had rained. And so she was making her tracks, and she would step in the puddle, then she would step on the dry pavement, and we would go down to the beach and she would step in the sand. That's my track. Granddaddy, make your track. So it starts at an early age where you look to see what effect you are having on the world around you, I think.
Then when it changed that you stop looking at your own tracks and you start to follow the other people's tracks. School?
Oh, definitely school. Well, no, parents, we do
Parents,
that
I
too.
think parents probably.
Yeah, shut up and sit down. That means do what you're supposed to do, not what you want to do.
I'm thinking now of the relationship between tracks and imprint, right? So like make an imprint. I guess imprints in sequence would be tracks, right? So the tracks are just a trail of imprints that you make in the beach and the sand and in dry pavement, with wet shoes, with waste, with um, communications, maybe. Interesting. And then I
With
think
your
that you get imprints. It's easy to fall into other people's imprints, right? It's like a worn path.
And I guess as
your
time goes by, tracks become traces. And our traces get, I don't know, do traces, do they get thinner or what happens to them? But they become less and less as time passes until
Or
there's
they
no
get
trace.
or they get used a lot and they become paths or ruts, right? They can go either way.
and it also has to do with your interactions, relationships with other people. So if I were to make fun of your beard, I am leaving a track. I'm leaving a trace um, that has made an impact on you. So the next time you may avoid Bill, or you may poke me back with something. Um, and so relationships and communications also leave tracks. How we say something.
I just saw on LinkedIn, and it was not for the first time, quite a common picture. These are dogs' footprints, cat, whale, whatever. And at the end, this is human, and there was a big mess of everything around. So,
I
like
love it.
landfill. It's quite interesting. A picture which express exactly what we do, because nature does not waste. So simple it is. But another question for tracks. If you see the railway tracks going up to this somewhere in the very rear end, there is a point where they came together, but you will never reach this point. Why it is so?
It's called the vanishing point.
Do we, when we walk the same direction, do we do exactly the same? Do we walk
Yes,
next to each other?
I think over the course of our lives, we eventually reach the vanishing point.
And if we do, so should we build up the tracks intentionally, which we leave behind, or should we build the stations next to the tracks? Which explanations, which are your books, for example, which is these talks are the stations, like a railway station or track station, which is there, and the people can stop by and listen or interact or do something. So the tracks without any comment can be misleading ones, or there can be even used to mislead someone. Of course, that's quite a common thing. And if you have seen, so there has been even the tracks on Mars or even on Moon left behind. So Kevin, you have something to say.
I was going to say the nice thing about a railway track is it is both, there's a destination at the end of it. And we know what that destination is, which makes railway tracks so reassuring.
So do you think, and that's a question for all of you, do you think that the tracks of current human development or the society development, or let's call it the human development, is going in the right direction? The current one.
Judgment call.
Sorry.
So if you look, so a short story. Okay, 1 minute. In 1963, I was 8 years old, and I traveled with my brother and my grandparents to the Gettysburg battlefield in Pennsylvania, where the Great War, or the Great Battle of the Civil War was. And they had brought people who had been at the Battle of Gettysburg, because this was the 100th anniversary. And so these had been boys, drummer boys, messenger boys, something, and they were dressed in the uniform. And I shook the hand of these people who had been at the Battle of Gettysburg 100 years before. And they had been born maybe in 1855, something like that. And in 1855, what was medicine? Medicine was leeches and bleeding you to get rid of the bad blood. Medicine was, what was medicine? What was communications, right? At that time, we could not pick up a phone or a telegraph and get a message to our family who had gone out west to settle the land out west. Now, I pulled my grandson, who is 6 years old, and he will probably live to the age of, hopefully, God willing, 2100. Right? So there is 250 years, is that right? 200 years between that. And what will medicine be like in the year 2100? What will communications be like in the year 2100? And so much has changed, but I touched both of them. I touched both of them. So when we talk about tracks, it goes back and it goes forward. And are we getting better? Is mankind progressing? And in a lot of ways, the answer is yes. And in a lot of ways, the answer is no, I think, in my humble opinion. Yeah, so that would be my question. My answer to that would be some yes, some no.
What about you, Noah?
My head is kind of spinning with the Bill's comments there, that you in one generation have connected with people that were alive during the Civil War, and you now live in a time where we send rovers to Mars. You know, like it's amazing. And if you look back in human history, as far as we can tell, there's never been progress at this rate before, right? Where we've made such leaps forward in all aspects of human interaction with reality. So I think for the most part, it's good. I do think that we are at risk, serious risk, for losing what makes us human. And I will offer a few examples of that. One of them is that we used to have really good memories and would be storytellers and gather around fires and have oral history that was passed down from generation to generation with great detail and incredible stories about the stars in the night sky and the constellations that were part of the fabric of human culture. We also used to be way more in touch with nature. People would understand herbal medicines and better connection with the food we eat, the waste we generate, the seasons, farming, animals, et cetera, et cetera. So we're making great progress as a species in all sorts of technological areas, but I'm concerned that we're losing some of the essence of what makes us human. So it's a very mixed bag.
What about you, Kevin? Sorry.
I think I can see some progress just in the fact that we've had nuclear weapons now for 79 years, and we've only used them twice. And that was in the first year that we had them. And who could have imagined that a destructive species could be so restrained? So I think there is some positive just in that fact.
You know, just before we started, I saw one post, I think it was on LinkedIn or any other social media. There was a human and a robot. And the robot says, I would like to have the same rights as you. and the human says, but you have no rights. And the robot answers, so we are same.
Ah, gotcha.
So it was quite interesting and wake up. It was a wake up call, really. Just 3 pictures, 3 comments. Very strong message. So I think that as you described, of course, the direction is, and I think that Noah described it probably. He did describe this losing humanity, if we call it so, against gaining on technology. It's exactly this balance, which I will not call it that it makes me scared. I'm not scared of the future, but I don't feel good about it. You know, I don't feel good about this separation of one part of the body because we can exchange it with something else. And that's, I think it's not a good direction. And if you follow the latest development of AI generally in let's say slightly general thing, that it looks like that all new computers will be equipped with some copilot, AI copilot and mobiles. So it will be difficult to buy it without than to buy it with. And just now tell me how to resist, because there will be no tool to switch it off probably. So this addiction to the technology will just increase.
I'm not sure it's addiction or augmentation. And what really concerns me about that is that the gap between those who can afford these tools, these augmented tools, and those who can't, is just going to get more and more severe. There are people that are currently walking around with augmented reality headsets that are feeding them information that people who don't have those headsets can't get. And I do believe in some ways that's a real advantage. In other ways, it also disconnects you from the people around you. Yeah, so it's a very mixed bag. I think that individually we are becoming more empowered, but as a society or a tribe or a group of people, we're becoming more disconnected.
I will call it more easily manageable. because you just send an update to the glasses and the people will do what the update will say.
There are so many thoughts, no, from your saying. You're expressing it like that. And so one thing that we are looking at is stratification, and each one of the technological or business model changes that comes along impact stratification, some positively, some negatively. So, for example, the ability to Zoom or to meet like this is a great advantage for people in the rural areas who cannot drive to school or so telemedicine and remote learning and so on becomes so much better, and so stratification is decreased. However, there's many examples of the stratification becoming more and the super wealthy becoming more wealthy. So the stratification is a very interesting aspect that as we look forward on the tracks, we see in increasing stratification or decreasing stratification, which goes back to a little bit back to your question earlier, Michael, about is it getting better or is it getting worse? And the other thought that popped into my mind as you were talking, Noah, was there's a lady here in Connecticut who gave a talk about 5 or 8 years ago or something at a dinner meeting, and she started off her talk by saying, "The pace of change today." And then she paused, and then she repeated it. "The pace of change today is the slowest that you will see for the rest of your life." And it was somebody took a baseball bat and hit me over the head because that's exactly right. It's only getting faster. And how we deal with that, especially how we teach our children and grandchildren to deal with that, is perhaps the biggest challenge that we have.
Just to stop you here, 1:40 to the end. Kevin, you have something to say. I saw it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that with change, we must be allowed to opt out, but not that we don't fit into society. It's not that we have to become Amish or Shakers or whatever it is, but the fact is that we cannot get rid of cash money to rely on technology. There's so many things that we must be able to say, no, I don't want to do that, but I'm still part of society.
And I would like to thank you all because we have 1 minute. And I would like to thank you for the time you spent with me. I would like to wish you and everyone who is listening, have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, be human. And if you leave your tracks behind, leave such ones that you will not shame looking back. Thanks a lot and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.